Hello and welcome to the History of the Germans, Season 11, The Fall and Rise of the House of Habsburg. Let others wage war, you happy Austria, marry. Is that really it? Did this family acquire an empire where the sun never sets through just luck and longevity? If indeed that is all it was an extraordinarily successful strategy. Let me read you a probably incomplete list of modern countries that at one point or another had been ruled by members of the House of Habsburg, in alphabetical order. Argentina, Austria, Belgium, Bolivia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Croatia, Cuba, Czechia, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, the Holy Roman Empire, Honduras, Hungary, large parts of Italy, Poland and Ukraine, Mexico, Netherlands, Nicaragua, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, Philippines, Portugal, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Switzerland, Uruguay, and Venezuela. Technically, I could have added England onto the list, though 4 years is a bit too short a time period to count. Seriously, do we really believe all that could be gained by marrying the right girl or right boy and then surviving for long enough to scoop up what better men and women had been fighting over? Plus, acquiring an empire is one thing, holding on to it is the really difficult bit. The British Empire lasted roughly 200 years. The Julio-Claudians controlled the Roman Empire for a bit over 100 years, same as the Tudors. Napoleon managed just 16. The Habsburgs, depending where one puts the starting point, kept a seat at the top table for at least 400 years. And whilst they had their fair share of exceptional rulers, Rudolf I, Maximilian, Charles V, and Maria Theresia, the majority of the Habsburgs who sat on European thrones ranged from mediocre to outright inept. And these average men and women ruled lands where people spoke Bosnian, Croatian, Czech, Dutch, French, German, sort of, Hungarian, Italian, Polish, Portuguese, Serbian, Slovak, Spanish, Tagalog, and Vorarlbergisch. If their subject had one cultural thing in common, it was that they were Catholic. But that was more a function of Habsburg rule rather than Habsburg rule being a function of the Catholic faith of their subjects. So could that be held together through sheer inertia? Methinks not. The Habsburgs weren't the first, nor were they the last European dynasty that was presented with tremendous opportunities to seize crowns. And where some charismatic and competent founder of a dynasty managed to amass a vast range of territory, the kids usually mess things up pretty quick. Just think about the RPM of poor Emperor Karl IV in his grave when he thinks about his sons Wenceslas and Sigismund. So, there must be something about this family that sets them apart. There are many myths about the Habsburgs, some recent, some very old, some created by writers and acolytes, other outright forgeries from their chancery. Such stories can become immensely powerful and hold the people in thrall to their leaders. And they certainly drank their own Kool-Aid and went through life convinced of their own exceptionalism. But again, is that it? Just a bunch of stories and a completely bonkers family motto? Now I have a strong suspicion that the answer to this question lies in the 200-year-long period between the murder of King Albrecht I in 1308 and the election of Emperor Charles V in 1519, the time we want to cover in this season. For most of that period, the Habsburgs had been languishing in the wilderness. They experienced defeats, divisions, and humiliations. They were even expelled from the Duchy of Austria, just before they rose meteorically to world leadership under Maximilian and Charles V. Something must have happened in this period that forged them into the most successful European dynasty. As they say in the music industry, every overnight success was years in the making. And that is why this season is called The Fall and Rise of the House of Habsburg, and is dedicated to the question, what made the Habsburgs so special? And if I have learned one thing in 4 years and 10 seasons of doing this show, it is that I know nothing. It is always a journey where I start with the skeleton of the story I want to tell, and every time I dig deeper into each episode, I find things that change my initial perception. So, we will kick off next week with our usual recap episode where we go back to King Rudolf of Habsburg's election in 1273, the murderer John Poricida, Frederick the Handsome, and trace the family up to Albrecht the Wise. The following episode will then take a deep dive into Rudolf, called the Founder, who should rather be called Rudolf the Forger. His fake Privilegium Maius created not just a truly fantastical family history that pulled in Julius Caesar and Nero, Norix, the son of Hercules, and a bunch of medieval worthies that lent these nouveau riches from Switzerland a pedigree no other dynasty could match. It also laid the basis for the administrative structure of Austria. After that, we will go to the Battle of Sempach, where Archduke Leopold lost his land and life whilst giving birth to a new nation. And after that, well, we'll see. As I said, I only have a skeleton so far. You will definitely meet Frederick III, the imperial arch-sleepyhead, who was maybe more awake than he is given credit for. Maximilian I, the last knight, PR genius and marriage expert. And finally, Charles V, in whose empire, as I said, the sun never set. And we will meet some of our favorite figures from previous seasons again. Jakob Fugger, the Wittelsbachs, Margarete Maultasch, Empress Sigismund, as well as the big changes, the printing press and what can be done with it, the universities and Renaissance art. I hope you will come along for the ride. Episodes drop every Thursday at 0500 UK time, starting 21st of August.